I was able to watch Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, and I truly believe we're going to get a lot of Oscar winners and contenders with this film. Now, in terms of the movie itself, I feel like it really depends on where you're coming from. As someone who never read The Odyssey as a book, I was happy to see this kind of visually fleshed out for me in terms of like timeline, because you do hear stories of the Trojan horse and also even the Cyclops. Being young, I never actually put the two together that is a part of The Odyssey. This is a story of Odysseus. I learned that much later. Your enjoyment of this movie is going to be dependent on what your expectations are, whether they do the book one beat by one beat, or if you're not so familiar with it, I don't think you're going to mind some of Nolan's liberties. Let's talk about it. One of the things I absolutely loved about this film is how grounded it was. Now, normally when you're talking about mythology and even like movies like Gods of Egypt, they're seen as gold and, different than the humans. Christopher Nolan does something where it takes that idea of gods and mythology and grounds it, meaning that it felt more like a religion than anything. Like, this is what these people at the time believed. Zeus and, Poseidon, all of these things. They don't pop up in the film. Zeus's law was heard a lot in this movie. Everyone following that is what was keeping the society together. And you see these larger than life things happening that are definitely in the world. It brought a sense of realism to these mythological stories, to maybe where this is how people would have either seen it or reacted to it in its time. And the cinematography still makes it look big no matter what they're dealing with. And I think that it brought a grandioseness to the situations that they were in, almost as if we're seeing these stories from a new perspective, especially the Trojan horse, from inside the horse, rather than just seeing them pull the horse into Troy and then they all spill out and attack everyone. You're actually getting insight into them being inside the belly of the horse for days and people drowning, and it's messy in there. So I thought that was a very good perspective on a story that we've probably all heard and know. In terms of the casting, I think this was another standout because everyone felt like who they were. And there are some cast members who absolutely rocked it in terms of their parts. One in particular, I will say, is Robert Pattinson. This man has range, and he played a good antagonist of someone who wanted to marry Penelope, the queen, but you can see his dark side. And he did a great job of coming in like a lamb and being a lion, and a lion in sheep's clothing, making you absolutely hate him. And with all the suitors that were there trying to win the hand of the queen, I think his role was a great embodiment of all of them. Tom Holland as Odysseus' son, I think he was perfect for the role because you had to believe that he couldn't take on the suitors himself. And Tom Holland being, smaller, having that boyish look to him, definitely did the job. At no point was I like, oh, he's about to go in there with a sword and completely take everyone out. Now, I know the internet was buzzing about Lupita Nyong'o being Helen of Troy, but there's one thing that I actually realized. No one's talking much about John Leguizamo being in the movie. He's not Greek either. But John Leguizamo's part brought some of the heart of, the longing for the people wanting a king and wanting everything to be right and for revenge and justice to be made. He even saying in the film that he feels like Odysseus was his son. I think John Leguizamo did a great job with the emotions as to, the hope of the people for Odysseus to take his rightful place. And speaking of Lupita, she didn't take me out the film. Her part wasn't even that big. This is who they saw at the time and who they sought after at the time. The face that launched 1,000 ships. She was Helen of Troy of, all the people around her who believed this is the power that she held. I haven't seen Matt Damon like this in a while. And I was actually getting Good Will Hunting vibes, if believe it or not. Just, the seriousness of it, embodied a soldier who was on a mission, cared about his people, but knew that not everyone was going to make it, and he was trying to minimize the damage. And I think it just came off perfectly. When he came back to actually take his rightful place, I absolutely loved it. He was a beggar who was pretending, to be, the beggar so that no one could know who he was, just in case anyone was trying to off him, obviously. He played a great leading man, and I think that he is definitely an Oscar contender, along with, John Bernthal as a supporting actor, even Tom Holland as a supporting actor. And it was very, very well done. The cast was perfect. And I think each of them, in their role, did their job. The only thing that I didn't like about it was some of the flashbacks. As you were going and building in the first half hour, it was a slow build, but it didn't last long, and the rest of it intensified as it went on, as Nolan does, right? Now, me not knowing or reading the Odyssey book and just hearing the stories here and there, I was blown away. It helped me to understand the story as a whole of his journey going from battling in Troy, not being home, to finally returning home and making everything right. I wasn't sure if he died in the end. And these are the things that were missing for me that kept the movie exciting. In terms of the flashbacks and the callbacks, in trying to piece it all together, what was the past? What was currently happening? What was a dream? That got a little shady for me personally. Overall, I gave this film a 9 out of 10. And it was the visuals, the grandioseness of it, and actually the grounding of everything that really made me appreciate this Nolan film. If you've seen the film, I'm curious to know what you didn't like about it and what were the best parts. Let me know. I remember the movies. If you're into entertainment nostalgia and just movies in general, you're in the right place. And I hope to see you all in the next one.